Hello, are you there? So, can you see me? Am I visible? Am I visible? Am I audible? Kindly type something to affirm that you can see me and can hear me because I can do neither. All right. So, I take it that you are able to see me and you are able to hear me? Yes? Please type a yes. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, good afternoon and welcome. I am so happy to interact with semester two after such a long time. It's a pity that I cannot see you and we cannot interact the way we normally would in the classroom. But this is the best that we could make of a bad situation. All right. Now, you are already done with the modules. They've all been taught uh, very ably by the teachers. But as you know, we have a doubt clearing class at the end. All right. So at the end of the modules, we have a class which is devoted to uh, clearing the doubts of the students. And several requests have come in. I have requests for a couple of topics to be covered. I assume you have some doubts there, which is but natural. Some of you may have missed classes. So I hope to cover them to the best of my abilities in the class today. All right. And after that, also, if you are left with any more doubts, please feel free to ask. So let us wait a few more moments for some more people to join in. I have really no idea who is there, but I am hoping that most of you have joined in. Now, I had given you a different link previously, but as I was trying to enter the studio, I found that I was unable to do so. All right, so I had to hurriedly create a new link and send you. So let us wait a few more minutes for a few more people to join in. So, should we start now? If you are ready, then kindly type a yes. I realize this is a very impersonal way to conduct a class, but the virtual world, at least the digital world, at least offers us some alternative. We can always bank on technology to help us out. So, if you are ready, kindly type a yes and we'll start off. All right. Thank you so much. Now, students, there were requests for doubt clearing on these topics. One is the theme of love and revenge in Wuthering Heights. I think I'll do it in general, where love and revenge also comes in. Then you wanted an overview of Porphyria's lover and Last Ride Together, Browning, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, and also the character of Thomas Becket in Murder in the Cathedral. Now, with the exception of Eliot's Murder in the Cathedral, the others are all from the Victorian age. So, uh, I think it would be no. We have Wuthering Heights also. At least we have okay. So Wuthering Heights. So Porphyria's lover and sorry Browning. That's Porphyria's lover and Last Ride and Tess Victorian age. So before anything else, I think it would be a good idea to gain uh, some kind of a basic idea on the Victorian age before we go into Browning and Hardy. All right. Now, when we talk about the Victorian age, we are taking into account a period of time spanning almost from, say, 1832 till about the beginning of the First World War. Even after the era of Queen Victoria had come to an end, signs of the times could be seen till about 1914, till about the beginning of the First World War. Now, the age itself had much reason to be proud of itself. Science progressed rapidly, education spread. It was the age of Lyell, Darwin, Newton, and many prominent figures. Now, we see a sweep of revolutionary ideas that impacted both society and literature. Also, we find that there was a battle between the new revolutionary ideas and the old set of values that resulted in a sort of a constricted atmosphere where there was a growing restlessness and an overemphasis on respectability, which caused the poet Arthur Hugh Clough, Clough, Arthur Hugh Clough, to write, "We are most helpless who had once most hope, and most beliefless that had that had most believed." I'll read that again. This is, I'll type his name, Clough. He wrote this in a poem called Easter Break. Easter Day, I'm so sorry. Easter Day, right? Okay. So he writes in Easter Day, "We are most helpless who had once most hope, and most beliefless that had most believed." All right. So this was a general feeling which was perceived in the age. There was also a conflict between religion and science. There were religious controversies. The ensuing literature was stripped much of humanity. Materialism seeped in. Of course, there were reform movements, which is reflected in literature. There were factory acts, which is also reflected in literature, especially if you have read Dickens. We've had political movements, working class movements. No doubt, science made life easier, but with the new inventions, with life becoming easier, life also became very materialistic. The average Victorian, as I said, was very concerned with respectability. The woman question was raised. If any of you are familiar with Tennyson's works, or indeed, the woman question is seen in, you may have, if you remember, oh no, you haven't done Mill perhaps in this semester, which you will do later. But this question was raised, and we see a lot of questioning uh, in the attitude towards the position of women. Now, what happened is that in trying to accommodate the new concepts, the new ideas, life became tense and confused, and all this is reflected in the literature of the time. Now, as we go on to now, since you there's a request for Victorian poetry, I'd like to say that Victorian poetry was, as Rickett has put it very rightly, it was the poetry of reason. It was a poetry of reason. And there was a distinct attempt made to intellectualize the vision of imaginative life. And what resulted was a very pessimistic criticism of life. The poetic impulse was, in fact, governed by a questioning attitude. In fact, it's good to have a questioning attitude, uh, but there were there was a questioning attitude which perhaps ran against the kind of vision, say, the romantics had, where the imaginative impulse was concerned. Now, there were three main voices in Victorian poetry. Of course, Tennyson, the Vathis of Victorian poetry, he is representative of all that is Victorian, the doubts, the fears, the conflicts. He also sublimated Victorian poetry. Then we have Browning, an optimist. He excelled in the dramatic monologue. And of course, Arnold. He was an intellectual, he was a cerebralist, he was the thinker who went into cause and effect. Of course, he was also very representative of his age, and he says that poetry is a criticism of life. All right. And if you remember, for the Romantics, poetry was a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. And then again, we have Eliot, who debunks the Romantics, especially Wordsworth, and he tells us that poetry is an escape from life. Now, so in a nutshell, we could say that this age was, for one, an age of stability. It was affected by the Industrial Revolution. We see progress in technology and science, but man becomes a slave of time. The age is marked by religious controversies. A deep questioning attitude is seen in people. The literature is marked both by reconciliation as well as by compromise. And I'd like to make a quotation here uh, from taken from Charles Kingsley's The Last Buccaneer. All right, I think I'll just type that. Charles Kingsley's The Last Buccaneer. and he says, "Oh, England is a pleasant place for him that's rich and high, but England is a cruel place for such poor folk as I." Oh, England is a pleasant place for him that's rich and high, but England is a cruel place for such poor folk as I. All right? So that should sum up an attitude of the people generally in the age, an age which was which created a society which was quite hidebound, very moralistic, sometimes bigoted. But let us find out what kind of a picture is represented to us by Browning and Hardy. All right. Now, I can do one thing. Since there are two modules covering two requests covering the Victorian, and we've just done uh, we've gone into a kind of an introduction to the Victorian age. Perhaps I should start with Browning, all right, and then we'll go on to Tess, and then we'll go on to the others that are there. That is Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte, and Eliot. Okay, so now Browning, as you know, he um, excelled in the dramatic monologue. And the dramatic monologue, as you know, takes place at a critical moment. We have a speaker, there is an audience, we have the audience or the listener does not speak, but his reactions are evident from that of the speaker. And the dramatic monologue takes place at a critical moment in the life of those involved. It has a dramatic quality to it. Now, Porphyria's Lover was perhaps written around 1839, and it was written in his early 20s. Browning was in his early 20s, and it belongs to a period when he was still trying to discover his poetic ideology. Now, the interesting thing is that it's called Porphyria's Lover, but we are never told the lover's name. All right? And also, what is to be noted is the kind of language used by Browning, which is very economical. Now, about Porphyria's lover, about the lover, for starters, we don't know his name, but what we can imagine is that he is a man who lives in the margins of society. He margins, I would say, not only socially but also morally. He is an insignificant person. He lives in a cottage frequented by Porphyria only at a time when she would not be seen by others. And when our poem begins, we find that Porphyria comes, and unlike she you see in the poem, she is the one who has taken the lead. Oh yes, before I go into all this, there is one thing which is very important. I know these poems have been done and everything has been done, but it is vitally important for you to read the texts. You have to read the text of the poems, you have to read the books which have been prescribed in the syllabus, because unless you read the primary texts, you will never gain a good understanding of them. If you jump straight away into secondary material, into the criticism, into ready made answers, then your understanding of the text will never be complete. All right. So you have to read the poem, familiarize yourself with the poem, then only you can understand what is being talked about. Now, in the poem, we find that it is Porphyria who takes the lead, all right, in the act of love, and it is not the lover, though the poem is named after him. But of course, he exists in relation to Porphyria, all right? So he is, what is his identity? Porphyria's lover. Now, when she comes, she finds that the fire has not been properly stoked. She cheers up the room. There's a storm outside. It is cold, and she tries to, waken him. And she takes off her clothes, and she calls him. He does not reply, and then finally he does respond to her. Now, we find that she herself confesses her love for him. And then, once again, you will find, if you read very carefully, that after a description of the weather in the opening lines, Browning devotes the next few lines in trying to uh, describe Porphyria's acts, how sensuous and warm she is. And we look at things from the perspective of Porphyria. All right, it has a lyrical charm, and this goes on till about first 20 lines or so of the poem. Then what happens is an anti-lyrical movement begins, and we find that we are still not very clear about the role of the lover, but we are beginning to question him, what kind of a person he may be. All right. And we try to analyze the character of Porphyria and the character of the man she has chosen to love. It seems that he is pale, his desire for her unfulfilled. We will find that he has a desire to possess her. And after having described his own condition, his own pale condition, he hurriedly describes, the steps that lead to the strangling of Porphyria at, you know, say about the end of the second section of the poem. And by now we've covered about 40 lines or so. Now, the lover looks into Porphyria's eyes, happy and proud. Her pride indicates her station in life, and she's happy being by the side of her lover. And this is told in no uncertain terms that Porphyria loved him, she in fact worshipped him. And the lover, he finds that he had got something which neither his station nor his character really entitled him to. And he swells in satisfaction, pride, and he, in a fit of madness, actually begins to plan to possess her and fix this moment forever. This is probably a rush of madness, and we wonder whether this man is insane. We are left, uh, we are left wondering at his nature. Now, we find that, at the peak of his bliss, when she appears to him to be, she appears so perfect and she appears so complete, and she looks so pure and good, he thinks of strangling her. In all her purity and all her goodness, he is unable to really appreciate her. What he wants is that he wants to, in a very perverted way, immortalize that moment. So, what he plans is to strangle her with her hair. And then the third section of the poem, we find that the narrator goes on to justify his act and display composure. But this kind of a justification or a composure could only uh, come from a person uh, who was not quite in his right frame of mind. And he asserts that Porfirio did not feel any pain. And he actually says, "No pain felt she. I'm quite sure she felt no pain." So Porphyria has come to the house of her lover at a time when it's first of all it's cold and stormy. No one has seen her. Stealthily, she has come to the house of her lover, and he is a man who is morally low. He is a man who appears insignificant, doesn't belong to the kind of station in life that she belongs to. And she takes the lead. She awakens him, arouses him. And what he does is that he kills her. He wants to possess her. And in that state of beauty and perfection that he is, he perhaps imagines that he could freeze her and keep her like that forever. So we are left to wondering at his state of mind. Then what he does is some even more bizarre, unbelievable. What he does is that he tries to open her eyelids and she appears to be laughing at him. He fiddles with the hair around her neck. He feels that her blood has coursed through her veins and her cheeks. Now, when she was alive, he did not caress her, but now to her corpse, he offers a burning kiss. So you see how perverted, how terrifying this picture is, how Browning has been able to capture it so magnificently in all its horror and all its bizarre and eeriness. Now, the head of Porphyria droops upon his shoulders. See how graphic it is. We can almost imagine it before our eyes. And this demented lover, he actually believes that she was smiling, smiling, rosy little head. That's what he says. And at, by the time the poem has come to a climax, there is a sharp irony we notice in when the poet says, "Porphyria's love, she guessed not how, her darling one wish would be heard. And thus we sit together now, and all night long we have not stirred." And Porphyria will never stir. All right? So, it almost is very idyllic, but it is perverted. It puts you off, and it's utterly shocking. We are we've also come across similar idyllic scenes, not similar, but we have been witness to idyllic scenes in say Pippa Passes, another poem. I'll just write the name by Browning, where he says, I'll just quote, "The years at the spring and days at the morn, mornings at 7, the hillsides dew pearled, the larks on the wing, the snails on the thorn." All right, very idyllic, but it is nothing compared to the kind of scene that we have in Porphyria's Lover. All right, so Porphyria's lover, on the other hand, we find that he's imagining himself to be in a perfect situation with his beloved, with his side. Now, we are reminded of another character, like also by Browning, that is the Duke of Ferrara in My Last Duchess, which is also there in the syllabus. And there too we have a jealous lover. That is what Porphyria's lover is, a jealous lover. And what does the Duke do in uh, My Last Duchess? He also kills his Duchess. All right? He kills his Duchess. He cannot shower her with love. He also wanted to possess her, but while she was alive, he could not, because she had a mind of her own, just as Porphyria has a mind of her own. And so, what did the Duke do? He killed her. He gave orders for the Duchess to be killed. And then what happens is that he is the proud possessor of her portrait. So he wanted to possess her. So he could possess only her portrait. And Porphyria's lover feels that he could possess her corpse. All right, so both perverted lovers, and both neurotics, both neurotics, and they feel shockingly that murder is necessary in order to possess what they love, who they love. All right. So this was a quick look at Porphyria's lover. And the other thing which you all wanted, I was told an overview, a general explanation. The other well is also by Browning, that is The Last Ride Together. All right. Now, The Last Ride Together is among one of his most notable one of Browning's most notable dramatic monologues, and it's about a man who wants a last ride with his beloved. A man has been rejected. This is the moment, the critical moment. A man has been rejected by his beloved, and he wants a last ride with her. All right. So he wants a last ride with her. Now, this was published in the year, first published in the year 1855 in the book, in the collection called Men and Women. Now, this has, this is a poem which has been critically examined, much critically examined. It encapsulates Browning's major philosophies. He always believed in the greatness of life over that of art. Also, he believed that experience on the earth was the ultimate. One didn't have to really wait for heaven to experience bliss. Now, this is a poem of unrequited love. The lover is rejected, but he requests his beloved for a last ride. And she eventually grants this to him. So he is very happy. And after he has been granted his request, he actually imagines that the world could perhaps end. Perhaps the world may end tonight. He perhaps imagined that the world could even end. But he was happy enough that he had been granted his wish for a ride with the beloved. So the ride begins, and the lady, she puts her head on his breast, and he feels wealthy. He feels he has gained all the wealth in the world. He used to be sad, but now he's full of happiness. He wishes to forget the past, and then he tries to compare himself or his lot with that of other men, other people, and he feels that the present bliss really cannot parallel with anything else. In fact, he actually feels so rapturous that he wishes that this ride could stretch right into eternity. Now, in the poem, we find that in order to perhaps hide his agony, what he does, the lover, what he does is that he deliberately compares himself with people who may have failed in their lives, but he finds that an acceptance of defeat and optimism in life is the best attitude or the best perspective one could have. Browning, as you know, was always very optimistic. Now we find that there is a wide gulf between imagination and creation. Browning deals with comparison of the life of the statesman, the soldier, the life and achievements of the lover, and the lover goes on to compare his lot with that of many others. He talks about the poet. The poet's achievement is great. He puts into words what others may only experience. He considers beautiful things as the best things in the world. But at the same time, he does not get what the world values most, that is, wealth or health or youth. He risks everything in order to come closer to his goal. He talks about the sculptor who devotes his entire life to art, becomes her slave, but even after toiling, even after creating his masterpiece, it is ordinary compared to a real girl. All right, then there's a comparison with the composer, and so on and so forth. And finally, uh, there is a realization that if he had succeeded in love, then he would have had no bliss to die with, nothing to look forward to after death, and heaven would have no meaning. So he says that what is always to be found in the core of Browning's philosophy, that happiness is the crown of life, and that life is a persistent struggle for attaining an ideal, and that love is a kind of crisis in man's life. So, if we can accept this imperfection, if we can accept defeat and failure, we can have something to look forward to later. All right? And we know that Browning's monologues are spiritual as well as sensuous, and the dramatic quality is colored as much with philosophy as with optimism. So even in Last Ride Together, this is very, very remarkably reflected. Okay, so the other poem that you have is My Last Duchess. But what you wanted was these two. These are two fairly simple poems. Shouldn't be difficult. Now, perhaps we could go on to There's Tess, or the two texts. There's Tess, and from Tess, I think there was, I think, just to one particular topic. But from what I think I go on to Wuthering Heights instead in that case, because that is slightly longer. That should take a little bit more of time. So, because you already have an idea of the Victorian age and you've already done the other texts, so perhaps we could do Wuthering Heights and then come back to Tess. Yes, or would you like to me to finish off with the Victorian altogether before we come over to um, Wuthering Heights? What would you like? I'll go on to Tess, or I'll go on to Wuthering Heights. What would you like now? I'd like an answer. All right. So what I'll do is that I'll go on to in that case, since we are doing the Victorian, then I might as well finish off with the Victorian. Might as well finish off with the Tess. All right. So Tess by Hardy. Now Hardy, as you know, is a transition novelist. He is the bridge between the Victorians and the moderns. And he is, of course, a superb storyteller. And in many instances, we find that, he has been able to actually prefigure the absurd in modern fiction. Now, also, he uses very startling coincidences and melodramatic effects in his plots. Now, all the novels of Hardy are localized in southwestern England, that is what he calls Wessex. Wessex in his novels, the folklore, the song, the local songs, the dance, the music, the rural sports, the birds, shrubs, crops, plantations, all these details, they enrich his writings, and he is very keenly alive to the spirit of the place. Also, we find his characters are mostly simple, passionate. They are full of a rustic robustness, all right, sometimes, free from the weariness of the city dweller. Now, his women are also very powerfully drawn. His plots are simple. He's concerned with the lives of usually a few people. And the central theme gathers a multitude of interests and incidents. Now, there are people who believe that Hardy took on a very pessimistic view of life, and his novels harp upon the ultimate wasting away of human endeavor, because man is no match to fate. But of course, we can contest that. Then again, within the field of pastoral life, which Hardy chooses, his art is quite unrivaled. Now, when we come to Tess, well, students, you have to read the text of Tess. I'll give you an estimate. I'll give you a critical estimate of it. Now, Tess is one of the certainly among the popular novels of Hardy, and among the most famous of all modern English novels. Now, Tess is called a pure woman, a country girl. She's a product of her time and her place. And her fall is, very integrally bound with her social situation. Now, it is a pity, that despite being the pure girl that she was, she met with such unfortunate circumstances in life. Now, we cannot really say that the work is actually pessimistic. It is more of an expression of the indignation at what a man has made of a woman. We can look at this book this way. Now, Hardy, we could say that, uh, kills her at least three times. She dies, Tess dies at least three times in the novel. Now, first of all, when she was with Alec, then the second time when she is with this boy Angel, and the third time again with Alec. All right. And she fails, you could say, to satisfy the demands of the world that she inhabits. So it is in her violation, neglect, and endurance that uh, we have Hardy's radical claim for the redemptive power of suffering. Because you see, she suffers all through. Tess only suffers. Indeed, um, the novel will remain a kind of an indictment of Victorian sexual and social morality, because you see, the society was almost, a very hidebound society, and it was a society which laid too much emphasis on respectability, where where the aesthetic value of the book is concerned. It is it is a book which is able to capture the pain and suffering of of Tess so well that the novel seems to be almost revolutionary on at least where the point of on the idea of sexuality. And we could almost call Hardy, a precursor to someone like, say, D.H. Lawrence. Now, Hardy's outlook on life is one of tragic gloom, human energy, human goodness. These are of no avail before the relentless sport of fate. Individuals, however, an individual, however good, however strong, just cannot stand the universal effect of the general tragedy of existence. And Hardy's characters are, for that matter, uh, powerless against fate. And we are reminded of Shakespeare's King Lear, where Gloucester says, "As flies to wanton boys are we to the gods; they kill us for their sport." All right. So it seems that the characters, despite being so good, are actually fighting a relentless fate over which they have no power, and they are being treated the way young boys would treat flies. Now, though you might call his works pessimistic, he is not a misanthrope, he is not a hater, and Hardy does draw, a very pathetic picture of the undeserved sufferings of people. Here also we have uh, Tess, who does not deserve to suffer what she suffers. And the men in her life uh, have made her suffer. It is so unfortunate about the child that she has and how it dies. So, the way destiny and fate play up against her uh, is what is uh, so unfortunate. And In fact, tragic irony becomes a technique um, in this text. A tech becomes a viable tool in this text, and we see the irony of circumstances. Tess is able to justify the title of the novel, that is, a pure woman. She is faithful. She is born of parents with limited means. She exhibits her qualities of her illustrious ancestors with pride, with loyalty. She's honest. But she's caught in a trap of dangers which are awaiting her. And she realizes that she becomes a victim of circumstances. She doesn't sin, she never sins deliberately. But her but she becomes she truly think of the incident with Angel Clare. She really loved him. She was loyal to him. She was unwavering in her loyalty to him. But what happens is that circumstances and life have other things in store for her. Or for that matter, her encounter with Alec. That man is a complete villain. And it is unfortunate that all the men that she meets give her more suffering. She suffers in all the situations that she encounters, and uh, finally, Hardy says that she dies, and the sport that was being played with her comes to an end. So, though Angel had tenderness for Tess was almost doomed to be unhappy and to suffer. So, where the novel is concerned, there are certain perspectives from which you can look at it. There are certain incidents in the book which you can look at. One is it will also help you to gain an understanding of the text. One is the meeting between Tess and Alec, Tess's marriage to Angel, then her estrangement and separation, then her reconciliation. Oh, okay, after this, Angel has gone on a sojourn in Brazil. The significance of this, Tess and Angel's reconciliation. Then we have a manifestation of fate in the novel. How far could Tess be responsible for this tragedy? We have to draw, a comparison and contrast the characters of Alec and Angel to understand this. And finally, we realize that Tess's life was, doomed, and therefore this was meant to be a tragedy. Now, please read the textbook, and then only we have then only a novel like this where you have such a young heroine, her toils, travails, sufferings, and how they are brought out right from the age of 16 to 21. No subplots, a very taut plot, and how controlled Hardy is in creating and developing the plot and the characters. So, with this, I think we should go on to Wuthering Heights. Any questions? Now, where Wuthering Heights is concerned, the last quarter of the 18th century and the early 19th century um, comes into focus. We should keep in mind what was happening uh, during this period of time, because this was a time last quarter 18, early 19. All right. Now, this was a period of social, economic, and cultural change in England. And these are years which are marked by uh, the consolidation of England as a powerful imperial nation. England expanded globally, so much so that one believed that the sun would never set on its empire. But of course, uh, with the growth of capitalism, we also see a cycle of boom and slump and continuous class conflict. Now, industrialization led to the end of what was a domestic system of manufacture, and it introduced the factory system, displaced the rural population to centers of urban growth. There was an inevitable growth of slums, squalor, poverty, disease, cholera, typhoid, tuberculosis. These were rampant, and medicine, healthcare systems, these were poor. Remember that Emily Bronte herself died at a very young age. She was only about 30 when she died of tuberculosis. And the characters in this book, that is Frances, Catherine, Isabella, Edgar, Linton Heathcliff, they all died due to some reason, some illness or the other. All right. So these are the concepts that one have to remember when one goes through the text. Now, society was undergoing changes. Industrialism meant an economic shift from an agrarian society to one which was dominated by the industrial world. There was a rise in individualism. There was also a rise in romanticism. We had the American War of Independence. This is, of course, late 18th century, 1776. After that, we have the French Revolution. And it is against the backdrop of these, that is, uh, against the backdrop of the French Revolution and the American War of Independence, that we have Wuthering Heights. But uh, though these were the important historical events uh, against which the book is written, there is no direct reference to them in the novel. All right. Now, we have in The Wuthering Heights the element of rebellion. First of all, its location, located in the formidable landscape of barren heaths, the moorlands, nature in all its raw and even hostile manifestation. All this form a very perfect backdrop against which the novel has been written. And there are the novel is about two houses. One is Wuthering Heights, after which the book is written, and the other is Thrushcross Grange. Now, both of them are in many ways symbols of power, symbols of authority to an older system. All right? They symbolize the older system of power. And this is challenged by the two major characters, Heathcliff and Catherine. Now, those who cannot adapt, they perish, and it is only the strong who can survive. And within these houses, within Wuthering Heights, within Thrushcross Range, we have forces of challenge and subversion, and these grow and they come into play with one another. Now, according to a very famed writer, Terry Eagleton, and just according to Terry Eagleton, um, this relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff is both the strength of the play as well as the weakness. Sorry, strength of the novel as well as the weakness of the novel. Now, its strength lies in what? In its power for subversion and its revolutionary refusal to accept contemporary society. And what was it in contemporary society that was being challenged? It was the idea of inequality. The exploitative and unequal society was being challenged. So, this challenge is the strength of the novel in the relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine. And at the same time, their relationship was also the weakness of the novel. Why? Because the weakness lies in the author's inability to locate a meaning in this relation in social terms. Because you see, Mr. Earnshaw had brought in Heathcliff, who was an orphan. He found him, brought him to the house, and he was the wild child. The love between him and Catherine is something which really cannot be explained in very easy terms. And Terry Eagleton also says that theirs was such a relationship that they could never find happiness, they could never really unite in the real world. They could unite only in the afterworld, which possibly takes place because there are stories that their spirits roam around the heath. So, in the relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff, we find uh, the strength to challenge the inequalities of the world, to be revolutionary, but at the same time, it's difficult to find a meaning in their relationship in social terms. And such a relationship cannot thrive in the real world, it can only thrive after they have died, or in an afterworld. Now, I'm saying all this assuming that you have read the novel because you see, the novel is very readable. It's a novel which apart from study also makes very good reading. Well, test does as well, and everything else in the syllabus does as well. But Wuthering Heights is a personal favorite. And this is a book which was written um, at a time when when the society was really not ready to accept it. It was, it, it's a very passionate book. It is a book which defies all the niceties, none of the nice etiquettes of Victorianism to be found here. All that is challenged and thrown to the winds. Instead, we have a very passionate story of which seems to, challenge the entire world. It is about, two houses, what I just said, Wuthering Heights, and separated by a few miles by another house called Thrushcross Grange, and the plot develops about the relation between people living in these two houses. Now, where the where the um, themes of the novel are concerned, the theme of love and revenge, which you all wanted. Now, the revenge motive, in fact, is sown very early in the novel. It is seen right at the start when Mr. Earnshaw brings in this orphan Heathcliff into the house, and he usurps the affection of the affection and the attention of Mr. Earnshaw. And Mr. Earnshaw's children, they begin, especially Hindley, his son Hindley, begins to dislike him, begins to get jealous of him. And the situation is aggravated by uh, the servant Joseph. And Hindley begins to ill treat Heathcliff after the death of Mr. Earnshaw. But Kathy, the daughter, she has a more special relationship with him. And as time passes, we find that she goes over to Thrushcross Grange and she meets the inhabitants there. She finds them far more refined. She she gets married into Thrushcross Grange. She marries Edgar, and this breaks Heathcliff's heart. He goes away, and then again he comes back. When he comes back, we cannot explain how he comes back. How he comes back. He's a richer man now. He has a better understanding of the world. He is a stronger person than he was before. In the meanwhile, um, we find the fall of Hindley. Hindley has married Frances. Hindley will die, and many complications take place. Now, Wuthering Heights. It was written in 1847. So the span that we have covered, what I mentioned, 1832 to 1914, it falls within this span. And Wuthering Heights, published in 1847, not I mean, published in a world which was not yet ready for it. It received cries of shock and horror, and it was so unconventional in its theme and style that it seemed to, almost give a blow to the um, Victorian sensibilities. Now, it has a strong resemblance, as we find, to the Greek plays. The entire action is enacted on the moors. Now, the Brontes spent a lot of time on the moors, on the heaths. Their father was very strict, and they spent most of their time reading, and they spent also a good deal of time wandering about in the moors. So you see, the moors and the heaths play a very important role in this book. Though, of course, the moors don't come to life the manner in which Egdon Heath comes alive in Hardy. All right. Now, we have the wild, open countryside. Nature seems to also reflect their character, the wildness in these characters. Now, we find that of course, there is where the plot structure is concerned, we find I look at it from three particular perspectives. One is the symmetry that we see in the novel, the symmetry which is a very definite and tangible shell within which the novel operates. So you have the Earnshaws in Wuthering Heights, you have the Lintons in Thrushcross Grange, and their compact families each have two children, a boy and a girl. you have Hindley and Catherine, and you have Edgar and Isabella. You know, Hindley and Catherine, they are more wild. Edgar and Isabella are the quiet ones. And then uh, you have a marriage between these two families. We know how you see, you can look we look at the novel, at the manner in which the relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine develops. Now you see, if Catherine's physical presence dominates the first half of the novel, it is her spirit which is dominating the second half of the novel. All right. So she seems to be the impetus. Catherine seems to be the impetus of the story, and the structure of the story seems to be Heathcliff. Now, also, the narration of the novel has been done very interestingly. That is through the characters of Nellie Dean. Nellie Dean, she looked after the children and the household, and Lockwood, the tenant. All right, so we see that when Lockwood first comes, he first comes. The reception that he receives is hostile at the establishment at Wuthering Heights. All right, and through him we can get an impartial, and uh, we can get an idea about the characters which could be reliable. Now, Nellie Dean also, she has a very intimate relationship with the characters because she's known them from, like she's known them always. But since she has been the housekeeper, she is, she is, and well, she's human. So often we find that uh, her uh, her narration may not be all that reliable, and also we find that she is, like she's the insider, so she will have sympathies towards the children and so on and so forth. Now, she almost acts as the chorus in a classical play. Just as the chorus comments, Nellie seems to comment. And she is able to emphasize the power of the first generation and her sympathies for the younger generation. We also see that she is narrating as well as participating in the actions, almost as a secondary character. She is nurse for Hayton and Kathy, and then, she is the only one who can reproach Heathcliff, whereas everybody else is so afraid of him. But as a narrator, Nellie Dean has her drawbacks. First of all, as I said, she was almost family. So she has her she is she has her sympathies uh, with the family members, as a result of which maybe she was not so impartial in what she narrated. Then again, her language seems to be very superior compared to her status in life. But there also there can be a plausible explanation about the merits of self-education. And another important factor in the novel, another important feature in the novel is the concept of time. All right, is the concept of time. All right. Now, we- now it seems that the novel is meticulous. The novel is meticulous in its. Can you just give me a moment? There's a phone call. Sorry there. Now, it is meticulous because where the time structure has been where is concerned. That is, it is possible to date every important event in the story, including the births, the deaths of the character. The novel begins sometime in October 1801, and Lockwood, that is where, with Lockwood as the tenant of Thrushcross Grange, and it culminates with the expiry of his lease in September 1802, which is a span of a year. And Emily Bronte is determined to date the events in order to further the illusion of reality. Now, this novel is punctuated regularly by references to uh, the present, for example, when Lockwood is unwell, or for that matter, which happens, around chapter 10, or when the doctor arrives. And the past and the present, they seem to be, coexisting in the story because of the way the narration takes place. And this is really remarkable because this is deliberately done by the writer. And also where the theme is concerned, there's a very passionate intensity in the human relationship, which is almost exhaustively portrayed. It is very it makes us sort of want to compare this with Jane Eyre, written by Charlotte Bronte, because in both the novels, the bonding between man and woman seems to transcend time and space, social standing, earthly barriers, everything. Everything is, transcended for a man and a woman to seek a meaningful relationship. And it seems to throw, uh, all caution and all niceties and etiquette to, and all laws to the wind. But then again, there is, a major difference because in Jane Eyre, the bond forged between the two humans is very creative. It is also, very healthy. Whereas here, the unions can sometimes be very tempestuous, and the passion can also be destructive. And um, this concentration on the theme goes to such an extent that that everything else gets subordinated. So more or less, these are the perspectives from which one could have a look at Wuthering Heights. And then the last thing that I am left with for you is the character of it is the character of Beckett. That's what you wanted, the character of Beckett. So from these three works, from this range of or from this period of time, from the 1830s to the beginning of the First World War, this age, we jump now to Eliot, a modern poet and writer. But what Eliot has immortalized in Murder in the Cathedral takes us back to the 12th century. All right. So now Eliot is, well, perhaps best known to you all as a poet or an essayist, and but he's also a remarkable writer of plays. And in Murder in the Cathedral, um, which is based on a 12th century incident, that is the assassination of Thomas a Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, at the hands of four knights at the bidding of Henry II. We get a glimpse of an attempt to re-establish a kind of drama which had long gone out of fashion. All right, so the verse play or the poetic drama, uh, which a writer like Eliot or a writer like Yeats sought to uh, sought to bring back into vogue against the kind of popular realistic plays which they were not so very fond of. Now, this play, Murder in the Cathedral, is based on the Greek plays. We have a tragedy, we have a theme which is taken from history, and we have the good pitted against evil. We have throughout the play an echo of the scriptures, the parables. He has even given us, he has also used religious hymns and portions of the Anglo Catholic Mass, and so on and so forth. Now, since the play has already been taught to you and what you wanted was the character of Beckett, I'll very quickly go through it. Now, Beckett is the central character, the pivot in Murder in the Cathedral. And the interesting thing about this is that when a character is pivotal, it means that all other characters play around him. All right? They are seen in relation to him. And Beckett, we find that Beckett was very close to Henry II. He was his friend. He was the Archbishop. He was the Chancellor. He had been now. It is believed that he was the Chancellor. He was Chancellor. He was made Archbishop, and he was perhaps made archbishop so that Henry could make the church subordinate to the throne, all right, to the monarchy. But Becket was not ready to let this happen. He was he was he was a strong, powerful character, strong and powerful person, and devoted to his vocation. And he was not going to allow this to happen, that is, to allow the church to become subordinate to anybody. So begins the conflict with him and Henry II. And as a result of this, what happens is that he um, he enters into a conflict with the king, and has to he is exiled for 7 years in France. Now, as a chancellor, he had performed his duties very well. Later, when the king makes him the archbishop, again he proves himself to be himself to be very able. Now, after he returns, he comes into conflict with the king. He goes off to France. Now, the play begins when he has returned from France, and there is a foreboding. There is this feeling that he might be murdered. All right, he might be killed. All right, the poor women of Canterbury who make up the chorus, they are afraid of him. Now, we have people warning him, but he sticks to his ground. Becket sticks to his ground. He is devoted to the Lord. uh, we have uh, the temptations uh, who come to swerve him away from his path, but he shuns all that. He is able to resist the temptations, and when the four knights come to murder him, he is even he is even he's advised to close the doors so that nobody can come in and harm him. But he refuses. Beckett refuses this because he says that the doors of the church should be open to all, and he leaves the doors open. The knights murder him. He is killed. So he is a martyr. He becomes a martyr. And um, the knights then turn to the audience and speak to the audience uh, and try to justify their action. Now, the question is that uh, two things to uh, analyze here. One is the meaning of martyrdom. He is a martyr. He's a martyr. He's a true Christian martyr. And the other is that and martyrdom is a central theme of this play. And the other thing is to look upon him as a tragic hero. Now, if we go by the classical concept of the tragic hero, that is Aristotle's concept of the hero, the tragic hero, as you know, is a man of eminence. So if you look at him, if you look at this, if you look at Thomas Becket, he was chancellor, he was the archbishop, he occupies a position of eminence in society. He's a man of high position. All right. So he fulfills that. He fulfills that because he holds the highest religious office, and he was Lord Chancellor. He's close to the king, so he's a man of eminence. All right. Then the tragic hero is one who is not entirely virtuous. He's a good man, but we know about the hamartia, we know about the flaw, which inclines a man towards his destruction. Now, we do find a flaw in him. We find his pride. His pride to be his hamartia, to be his flaw, tragic flaw. But then at the same time, how much can we say that it was his flaw, it was his pride which really led to his downfall? Because you see, he is shown as courageous, he is brave, and he is ready to lay down his life for the church and um, for reasons which are devout and good and benevolent. So he submits to his death also in all calmness. All right. And he remains a true Christian, faithful to the Lord. His devotion is unshakable. So we do see that he can emerge as a tragic hero, but not quite in the classical context, or even not entirely, say, even in the Shakespearean context. All right. So he is a hero, a tragic hero, but he is a tragic hero in his own terms. Now, where his pride and his egoism are concerned, critics have tried to say that these are the qualities that brought him down. But let us not forget that the catastrophe that we see in the play does not really stem from this flaw in his character. All right. So, this is certainly one way in which we can say that he is a tragic hero, but it is not really because of the flaw that the catastrophe in the play occurs. And so, the play, which is about the last few days of the life of Beckett, is able to capture um, uh, the essence of martyrdom. He waits actually for the murderers to enter and to kill him, and he emerges as the hero of the play. Now, we see the murder on stage, which is, I told you a little while ago that there are classical elements, but there are some non classical elements in this play. as well. For example, this murder of the king. So if, sorry, the murder of Beckett. So if Beckett is murdered on the stage, then this is non-classical element, because you see in classical drama, uh, we do not have the deaths are usually reported, all right, by a messenger or by by the chorus, uh, because of the obstructive costumes that the characters wore, the masks, then the their costumes. They walked on stilts. It was not possible to show conflict on stage, and so deaths and conflicts were usually reported. Of course, Shakespeare moved away from this. In Shakespearean plays, we have a mixture of classical and non-classical elements. Think of Macbeth. In Macbeth, you have classical and non-classical elements. You have the exploits of Macbeth being reported by a messenger. So that is a classical tool. But whereas you have the murder of the family of Macduff, that is very non-classical. That is you know that is what the Elizabethans like to see. They like to see this kind of violence. It on the stage, it did go down well with them. There's The audience liked it. So here we see a classical and non-classical elements being used by Eliot. All right. So this was um, this was what was requested of me, students. If there is anything else you wish, you may tell me, or you may even let us know on that group. All right. Any questions? All right, since there are no more questions, thank you very much, students. It was a pleasure meeting you, albeit digitally. And please stay well, stay safe. I look forward to meeting you in person soon. Thank you.